I'm Heidi Otway, your host for this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. In this conversation, we're talking about cannabis use in K through 12 schools. So let's talk and learn about this subject with our guests. Tamara Pryor is a holistic cannabis nurse, educator, and health coach who has spent nearly 2 decades as a school nurse for students in grades 9 through 12 in the state of Illinois. Nurse Pryor is a member of the American Holistic Nurses Association and a recognized expert in cannabis, nutrition wellness, and holistic healing. She completed the Medical Cannabis Institute's Medical Cannabis Curriculum for Nurses course and recently obtained her certification as a cannabis and health coach. Nurse Pryor, welcome to the forum. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for that introduction, Heidi. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Our other guest is K-9 Sergeant Kyle Johnson with the Taylor County Sheriff's Office. He currently serves as a school resource officer at Taylor County High School. He's worked in law enforcement for more than a decade and has experience serving on a drug task force in North Florida. Sergeant Johnson, welcome to the forum.
Good morning. How you doing? Thank you.
Thank you. To everyone joining us on this live program, please share, post, and tag a friend on Facebook to have them join this conversation. If you're on YouTube, share the link so others can join us as well. During the forum, we want you to send us your questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best to have our guests answer them. We also want you to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comments on YouTube and Facebook after the live program. Your name will be entered into a drawing on September 7th, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. Now, let's start this conversation on cannabis. So after medical cannabis was approved for use in Florida, the state ordered school districts to create their own guidelines that allow students with medical marijuana cards to use the product on campus during school hours. It's been a few years since the first policies were created, and it appears that not all school districts have guidelines. So, Officer Johnson, I'm going to start with you. Does Taylor County schools and those in nearby counties have policies?
I'm not sure on the nearby counties, but the ones in Taylor County do not. We do not have a policy on that yet.
Okay, so what's allowed on campus?
Zero. None.
Okay, good to know. Nurse Pryor, you're based in Illinois. What are the laws there when it comes to allowing students to use medical cannabis on campus?
And so if the student is going to use medical marijuana on campus, they have to have they have to be certified patients. So they have to have 2 certifications signed by a recommending physician and a reviewing physician. And then once they have been approved, once they receive that, they can then receive their medical cannabis card. They have to have either, they have to have caregiver. They can have up to 3. It can be a parent, guardian, or some other caregiver. Mm-hmm. That is an adult, of course. And then once they receive that, they have to present all of that to the school district, well, to the school, whichever building that they're in. Mm-hmm. And now the school district does have to adopt a policy mm-hmm. for administering cannabis before that cannabis can be brought on campus. Okay. So all of those things have to be in place. They have to have a medical cannabis card, but the school district also has to have a policy. And in addition to that, the parent and the physician has to complete what we call a medication authorization form mm-hmm. that has to be on file also with the school.
Interesting. So, Nurse Pryor, what's the process for a kid to take their non-smokable, non-inhalable products, such as oils, tinctures, or lotions during the school hours?
Okay. So in my building or in my district, at this point, we do not have a policy. We are currently working on a policy. But once the policy is in place, the parent has to submit the medication authorization form. It's like a doctor's order, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they also have to present the child's medical cannabis card. And it has to display, it's going to display their name and all their information. And And once they submit that, it can be administered by either a nurse or administrator who has taken the Illinois Department of Public Health training. It's an annual training that they must take before they can administer to the student.
That's really interesting. So how do you have to keep the cannabis product separate from, let's say, other medications that students may be allowed to take on campus that are like, traditional medications?
Yes, and that has to actually be included in the policy that's created. Where is it going to be stored? It cannot be in our traditional medication cabinet. That's already, those medications are locked up as well. But it has to have its own medication cabinet just for those products.
Wow,
And it can only be accessible by the nurse and or administrator that has been trained.
yeah.
Now I have a question, because we don't have a policy here, and we eventually will have to write one. Does the kid take it home every day, or do they leave it?
They leave it.
They leave it? Okay.
They leave it. Yes.
Okay.
And it remains in that locked cabinet.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, for all of our listeners and viewers that are in Florida, I would recommend that you go to your school district, because they will have their policies posted. And you can also talk to the school nurses, and they can let you know what the policies are for your specific school district in the state of Florida. As I referenced earlier, we have some school districts that do have policies and guidelines and some that don't. So I would recommend that you do that. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, we know that every school district is different and every state is different when it comes to medical cannabis use. But I think that, we really should kind of dive in a little bit about cannabis being on campus in general. And so, Sergeant Kyle, I'm going to kind of go to you to talk about, as a school resource officer, what are you seeing when it comes to cannabis on school campuses? And I'm talking about the adult use illegal form of cannabis here in Florida.
For the adult use, I don't know that we have any issues for the adult use part on it. For the juvenile,
where kids are bringing it on campus or using it.
Right. We've had a couple incidents of kids bringing it on campus. We spoke the other day about it was medicinal marijuana that they actually had gotten from their grandpa.
Oh, so you're having kids bring medicinal cannabis.
It's making it very easily accessible to them now. If they know where it's at in the home, or if their grandparents have it and they know where grandparents keep it. That's actually the case that came in through our investigation. It actually came through grandpa's. And just like that, we follow the investigation, and you go ahead and you charge it accordingly. As far as just the recreational usage coming on to campus, knock on wood, we haven't had too much of that. And I think it's largely in part to, I've been canine officer for so many years, and I actually have a dog that comes to campus with me multiple days a week, that we walk through classrooms, parking lots, teacher parking lot, visiting parking lot, student parking lot. We walk them through it all. And it's a random deal. They don't ever know whenever we just decide, hey, we're fixing to go clear a class and walk a dog, So I think that has greatly deterred our use of marijuana on campus.
So then my follow-up would be, what happens if the dog smells something?
If he smells something, we treat it just like we would if we were on the street. If it's a vehicle, we get the owner of the vehicle, we get the parent on the phone. The parents have come up here. We've shown them exactly what we found out of the vehicles. The kids know. We're kind of a small town, so they kind of see us working the streets already. So they kind of know the process of it. So we just, we let the school decide, and we go ahead and follow it through the law.
Yeah. What are some examples of where you all actually found a kid who had cannabis, and what was the outcome of that?
So we actually had a senior a couple years ago that we done a vehicle walk in the parking lot, and we found some, misdemeanor amount marijuana. At that point, he was fixing to graduate, hoping to go to college. So I took my discretionary tactics on that. I let the school handle the discipline action on it without filing charges on him. And Matter of fact, he came back about a year later and hugged my neck that he actually went on to college and he was able to pursue his degree without having any trouble because of that. He paid his consequence. He paid his punishment through the school on his consequences, and we were able to move on and get him corrected.
Yeah. So, Nurse Pryor, you've had decades of experience in the schools. Have you experienced or been called into action if a student has been perceived to be high or has product on them?
Yes, I have. So, if they suspect that a student is high, they call me down, and when I go in, I let the student know that I'm not there for discipline. That's not my role. And my role is to make sure that they are safe and that they don't need further medical care. And so my role is to do an assessment on the student. I'm checking their vital signs. I am just making sure that they just don't need further medical care. That's my role.
And then any examples of where you may have seen a student, you knew something was wrong?
Yes, so typically, one of the first telltale signs is that their heart rate is really high. If I know that their baseline, based on maybe physical or them being in my office previous times, and then sometimes we have to check with the parent to see if that, what their baseline is. But usually the telltale sign is that their heart rate is really high. We have also had students that their behavior is very unusual. Maybe they're extremely hyper, or maybe they're paranoid. And sometimes they're vomiting because the THC that was in the product was just so high, it makes them vomit.
Wow. So in what grade levels do you all see the most cannabis use among students within a school?
It varies.
I'm going to say it starts here at the middle school level.
Wow. Tell me about that.
Well, I made a phone call the other day and was talking to the resource officer at the middle school, and they told me that in the last couple of years, they've had 10 to 15 cases of marijuana that's actually been caught on campus. And that's, what is that, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So it's starting at a young age.
Mm-hmm. And Nurse Pryor, we were talking earlier, and you said that sometimes you just ask the kids why.
Yeah, and that's true. When I go in there after I've done my assessment, that's really what I want to know. Once I know that they're okay, what is their why? There's a reason that they are illegally using cannabis. There's a reason that they're not going to their parents and talking to them about their use, or thinking about using, or wanting to use cannabis. There's a why behind it. And so I want to know the why so that I can help them further, so that so our social workers and our counselors can help them further, because there usually is a why.
And from your experience, what have you heard the why?
Loss of loved ones. Sometimes some students are really stressed about their classes. Sometimes there may be some abuse going on in the home. And so those are the whys that some of the students have shared.
Yeah. Sergeant Kyle, what about you when you encounter some of these kids and you kind of inquire, what's the situation? Have you any examples?
Yeah, the same thing she just said. I have heard loss of loved ones. I've heard anxiety. And then I've just heard that's just what we do, So, it's a pure recreational thing. So I've kind of heard the whole gamut of it,
Yeah. So let's talk about the impact of cannabis use on young people. And Nurse Pryor, I'm going to kind of lean on you on this one about, what are the health concerns and health risks of young people using cannabis recreationally, adult use?
Well, first of all, they have no idea what they're doing, most of them. I mean, that's just, they have no idea what they're doing. Their brains are still developing. we have a lot of research actually that is out there, although a lot of people don't believe that we have, very much research, but there is a lot of research that's out there. But there still is a lot of research that needs to be done because we don't know how that it can impact their brains because they're still developing. And so that, then there's of course a fall risk. They can injure themselves because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what's in the product. They don't know how much THC, that's the compound of the cannabis plant that gets you high. They don't know how much is in the product that they're consuming. And then I've also found that a lot of our students are using the vapes, the oil vapes.
Oh.
And first and foremost, for me as a nurse, oil and lungs don't mix. So that's an issue. And then where are they getting it? These products aren't being tested. They're not being tested for heavy metals and pesticides and molds or other drugs.
Right.
That are harmful.
Yeah.
So they don't know what's in it. And it's not regulated in any way. And so it can be very harmful, so that's the concern. Those are the health concerns.
Yeah. Sergeant Kyle, did you want to add to that?
I think she hit most of it. But yeah, and I'm even going to step just one step further with the synthetic cannabis that is out there now and the makeup on it. I mean, it changes just so, so you can't, you have to send it off to have it tested to even know what is in it, to know how to even charge it. So they don't have a clue when it's getting mixed up and what's being sprayed on it, and to affect the high that they're getting. Some highs just ain't good enough, so they want to spray a little bit, add a little bit to it, and so yes, it is a true concern on what they're actually putting in their body.
Yeah. So I want to talk about edibles, and we did we had someone come on and talk about in South Florida. It is they're commonly seeing ice cream trucks or what looks like ice cream trucks that are selling cannabis products, the CBDs and the Delta 8s and such. And it looks like candy, it's the gummy bears, it's the lollipops, it's the brownies and the cookies. Let's talk about that and what you all are seeing in the schools with young students using those. Sergeant Kyle, you want to take that on?
Yeah, I can take that. So we've actually addressed just that situation of outside food and beverage coming on to campus, mostly the food. If it's not an ordered lunch or something like that from a reputable restaurant, something like that. But if it's homemade stuff, we have cut it out. You're not allowed to bring any more homemade unless it is for a party and it has been approved through the administration. You're not allowed to bring it on the campus anymore.
Well, what prompted that decision?
Just there was some concerns that was coming in with some candy that we were seeing. And we done some talking, we done some investigations on it and found out that it was actually a legit homemade candy that was being made. But I felt like that it was opening the door for us to run into the edibles being brought on campus and disguised as normal snacks or food.
Interesting. Nurse Pryor, what about your experience?
So I just would like to ask Officer Kyle, you mentioned that you shut down the candy or the homemade products that come on campus. Are you speaking of you said anything that's outside of a party or something that the kids are bringing in for in their lunch? Can you?
No, what I'm talking about, we had we had some kids that would bring brownies, they'd bring candy in and they would just share it with their friends. So it's that type of stuff. If you bring it in your lunch, that's one thing. We're not searching lunch boxes, obviously. Okay. And if it's an outside food source, we're not going through your meal. But if you're bringing it in and it's in a bag and you're just passing it around to your friends, that's what we're cutting out now.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
What I normally see in our building are the gummies. Gummies are they're a hot thing. Because it looks like normal candy, it looks like a gummy bear or a gummy worm. So
that's. And then what happens if you see that? you see that? What happens? Do you bring in the school resource officer, or what does the teacher do?
So if this child is displaying unusual behavior in the classroom, we have an emergency button that they can push that's on the wall, or we have a helpline rather, that they can call to get an administrator into their classroom to remove the child and take the child down to the dean's office, and then it's investigated further. There has been instances where the child was not able to be removed from the classroom right away because they just didn't look well. Maybe they were vomiting, or their behavior was quite unusual. So I was called down. In those cases, I'm called down to assess the student in the classroom to make sure that they're safe and that the EMS service does not need to be contacted. So make sure that 911 does not need to be called. And then if the student is healthy, they're safe, then the deans and the resource officers take over from there.
Mm-hmm. So, Sergeant Johnson, do you all do drug testing of kids?
We do not, but our district actually has a policy. And if we suspect one, we can have them drug tested. And that's for the athletes that actually sign the waiver that they can be drug tested. If they haven't signed that paperwork, we contact the parents. We let the parents know, and we've had a really good response with our parents that are not supportive of the bad habits. So they will have them drug tested on their own.
So Nurse Pryor might be a good, thank you, Sergeant Kyle. So Nurse Pryor might be a good time for you to kind of educate our listeners and viewers about the endocannabinoid system and how cannabis affects that, especially when we're talking about young people, and also a little bit about dosing, because when you think of the gummies, it takes a while for that feeling to happen. So can you talk a little bit about that from the medical side?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So the endocannabinoid system is the master control system of all of our other systems in our body. And so if our endocannabinoid system is out of balance, then there are going to be other things that are out of balance. And so if you know something is going on that's out of balance in your body, then your endocannabinoid system is out of balance. And so I wanted to just kind of step back just a second just for a moment about the testing. So let's say, the child is saying on that day, they did not consume, right? But the parent takes the child to go get tested on that day to the doctor to see if the child is lying about consuming on that day. The test that we have, it tests for a byproduct of THC, which can last in the body anywhere from 5 days to 30 days or beyond 30 days, depending on the person. So it could be that maybe that child did consume maybe 4 days ago and actually was being honest about not consuming on that day. And so some of the testing to find out if they were high on that day is not reliable. So I just wanted to, add that part of it, because we have had parents say, I'm going to take you today, to see if you really did consume today. But it will pick up on, obviously, that they are consuming, and that needs to be addressed. So, so getting back to the endocannabinoid system. So let's say, they eat a gummy, right? They're feeling fine. It could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the setting that they were in, the food that they ate, before it kicks in. So it could be 35 to 45 minutes and they're feeling fine. And then all of a sudden, an hour later, they are extremely high. Their behavior is erratic. Their heart rate is very high. And they may even start vomiting, depending on how much THC was in that product. So it depends on, and that can depend on, what did they eat? Did they eat? Was it fatty foods? Because when you have something that's a fatty food, maybe it's like avocado or something like that, it takes longer for the edible to take effect. But when it hits hard when you've had a fatty meal. And they don't understand that. And what are our kids eating usually in the cafeteria? Burgers, fries,
Yeah.
pizzas,
Fatty foods.
fatty meals, right? And so they don't understand that. They don't understand how the endocannabinoid system works. And so that's where they can get into trouble also when they're consuming.
Is it possible for a kid to overdose on gummies that are CBD or THC gummies?
So when you say overdose,
Well, that's a term that most people would think
you
that.
can.
I'm just curious. I don't know what other term to use. Could they overconsume
or overdose? So what overdosing looks like is when they're vomiting. What overdosing looks like is when they're paranoid. Can they die? No, because there's not enough receptors in the brainstem where it will depress their respiratory system.
Okay.
But can they overdose? Yes, that's what overdosing looks like for them. The paranoia, the vomiting, the erratic behavior. That's what it looks like. It's not pleasant. It doesn't look pleasant.
Yeah, I can imagine with a child too. That's probably terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's scary. And when you take an edible, the other thing that they don't understand, so when they smoke, they're usually okay within 1 to 4 hours. When they take an edible, they don't understand that once you overdose, that could take 6 to 8 hours and even longer. Some even 24 hours or more for that to leave their system. So they're feeling pretty horrible for a long time.
Wow. Officer Kyle, have you seen any kids in those kinds of states in your schools?
I haven't had any here at the high school that has been in. We've had them come down, but they've all been able to walk down on their own. Dilated pupils, feeling dizzy, a little nauseated. I know that there was a parent that their child called them from the school. I want to say it was the middle school, and she took her to the hospital because the kid admitted that they was not feeling well. And it was an edible that they had gotten from a friend that had caused them. So they actually wound up in the hospital for a little bit.
Wow.
So,
wow. So we've talked. Please continue. Please continue.
I was just going to add that, and that, the symptoms that we're talking about, that's if only THC is in that product. Yeah. If there's other drugs that's in that product, then yeah, there is a chance that they could die. They don't know what's in the products that they're consuming. That's why it's so dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about fentanyl and all kinds of.
Raid roach spray is one of them too.
Raid, tell me more.
Raid roach spray.
Tell me more about
when I worked on the street, they would put their drugs on a screen, and they would actually spray it with Raid roach spray, and they put a little bit of electric current to it, and it crystallizes it, and they mix it in with for their highs. So, I mean, you're getting all kind of chemicals that you don't know. I mean, you buy it on street level, you don't know what's in it.
I'm completely right.
And to some unsuspecting children, a gummy is just a gummy to them.
Yep.
So what is your advice to a kid whose friend says, hey, have a gummy or a brownie?
I actually have a high school student, and I've already given him the speech. I actually gave him the speech when he went to middle school and elementary school. No, the answer is no. I told him, don't take anything from anyone. I don't care if it is a friend, because maybe that friend got it from someone else and they don't realize what's in it. So I tell him, if you want some candy, you have money, you either go to the vending machine and you get it yourself and open the package yourself, or we also have a school store. You go and you purchase your candy from the school store. Don't take anything from anybody. I don't care if it is your friend. That's my speech.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about, consumption, but what about if students are caught selling the product, illegal product?
Then
tell me a little bit about your experience.
If they are caught on campus, then they follow the letter of the law, and they just have to understand it. I've had the conversation with many students. The other thing too, just to back up just a little bit on what you tell your students when if they are approached by some of that. I actually have an open door policy in my office, and I encourage every kid just walk in here and talk to me. I don't try to hide anything. They can come in, and I have 3 in the high school myself, and I tell them the same thing. If you don't know, come talk to me, and we'll get it figured out. But yeah, we follow the letter of the law. I mean, and I don't sugarcoat it when I talk to them, and I try to give them as many warnings as I can before we get to that level. If I suspect something, they get called in, they get talked to, they get explained the process, and when by the time it gets to the point that they're caught with it, they already know that they've had ample opportunity to stop what they were doing. So, most of the time in the couple occasions that I've had, it's been, you're right, I'm sorry, and they'll deal with it. They've already known. We've already set the groundwork that I explain it to them. This is what's going to happen. This is the process of it. So that's how we roll.
Interesting. So this has been a very enlightening conversation. I'm still speechless about the road spray. I can't get over.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I can't get over that part. But we did get a question from one of our folks who registered to participate in the show. And the question is, how prevalent is this in the elementary schools? Are signs and symptoms of marijuana use different in a child who's in elementary school than a child that's older? Anybody want to answer that question, Nurse Pryor?
And the signs and symptoms are not any different. It really depends on the person. So maybe someone's going to, depending on what they consume, maybe someone's going to be really sleepy. Maybe someone's going to be paranoid. Maybe someone else is going to vomit. There isn't a difference in age. It depends on the person.
And then Officer Sergeant Johnson, have you seen cannabis use or heard of any stories at the elementary school level?
The only thing I've heard, and I'm not 100% on it because I don't do those elementary school, but I believe there was an incident where a child took a backpack to school, unbeknown to them, but somebody had put something in it at home, and it was found in the book bag at school. Mm-hmm. But from my understanding, that was a completely innocent child that had just had it put in their backpack, whether it was to be hid or distributed or whatever, but the kid didn't have anything to do with it.
Okay, that's good. Well, I'm thinking about pop culture and how we're seeing more, movies and TV shows and celebrities talking about cannabis use. And then I'll go a little bit deeper when it goes to school and in pop culture where, kids will walk into the bathroom and everyone's smoking pot, right? Mm-hmm. So are you all seeing that, or is that happening in your schools? And what do you do about that? What do kids do? I mean, are they doing it, or, how do you enforce that or stop that from happening?
Again, I'm sorry, Ms. Pryor. Again, they're doing it. And they're doing it on the streets. And the ones that walk in and you can obviously smell that they've been doing it, they come to my office and we have a heart to heart about it. I mean, I've had kids tell me, Mr. Kyle, we're not bringing it to the school because you got that dog. We know what the dog does, which is good for me, but that doesn't stop them when they step off of campus. Or when they get in the car with their buddy on the way home or something like that. So, we're fighting what I'm going to say is an uphill battle whenever, there are parents out there that's okay with it. And so I think we're fighting an uphill battle at times.
Mm-hmm. Nurse Pryor?
Yes, we do. We see that in our schools. You smell it coming out of the bathroom, and then you have to go in there and say, what's going on in here. And we follow our policy. They go to the dean's office and the deans handle it from there. Maybe I'll be called down depending on the situation. Usually I am. But I think it's about presence. And that's one thing about my district. I love my district. We try to be, and we are really present in the hallways. We do the hallway, the sweeps, the walks, just to see, where students are, where they're supposed, find out where they're supposed to be, where they're going. And so that's how we manage that. We're just being present.
Yeah.
Just being present in the hallways and where they may be.
Right. So just like Sergeant Kyle has his dogs, you guys are present.
Yeah, we're present. We're walking around and we're seeing what's going on and we're asking questions.
So do you all have any closing thoughts? I'm sure we're going to have parents listening. We're going to have teenagers listening. We're going to have caregivers listening. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers when we talk about cannabis use on K through 12 schools? And Nurse Prime, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to close with Sergeant Kyle.
Okay. Yeah. This is about education. This is about educating the parents, and it's about educating the students. And the parents, I just want them to realize that just as any other medication that you have in your home that you don't want your child to have access to, that's how you should be treating your adult use cannabis. Just the way it's locked, it's locked up, it's put away, and you're trying to avoid your child from getting a hold of maybe your opiates, then that's the same way that we should be treating our adult use cannabis, our medicinal cannabis. Make sure it's put away, and have a conversation with your child. Children should know, just like this other medication is for adults only, this medical cannabis is for adults only as well. And I also think that we need to start educating our children about their endocannabinoid system. We educate them on all the other systems, but we're not educating them about their endocannabinoid system. And that's the master control system of all of the other systems in our bodies. And so if we can teach them, Officer Kyle mentioned that some of the students are consuming because of anxiety. Some students are consuming because of ADHD. Some students are consuming because of depression. And so we are teaching them that you can actually produce your own endocannabinoids based on what you eat, your nutrition, moving your body, exercise, meditation, breath work. You can actually produce your own endocannabinoids. And so you can help yourself, your body can help manage your depression and your anxiety and your ADHD, and make sure that you are, and encourage them to speak with their counselor, speak with their parents, speak with their social workers that are available in the school to help them through that, speak with the school nurse. And then parents, if your children are having concerns, get them to their pediatrician, sit down and have a conversation. And you all are a part of the process. You all should not be a victim of the process, the student and the parent. You are a team member when it comes to that healthcare plan. So get your pediatrician involved. And if you have to get all, the other team members within the school involved, get all of them involved so that we can all help your child. We can help the student.
Thank you. That's great advice. It takes a village.
It takes a village, for sure.
Sergeant Kyle.
So I'm going to speak to it on the law enforcement side of it. I'm going to speak to it on the SRO side. And I know here in Florida, we've got a great group of SROs. I know in our district, we got a great group of SROs that are here 100% for the kids. I'm going to say, be honest with them. Be that voice that corrects them when you know that they're doing wrong, and you don't have to browbeat them. All you have to do is explain it to them. You just talk to them, make those connections when you're out and about, when you're in the school, and when you see these kids, because some of these kids, they don't have the correction on when they go home. And that kind of breaks my heart at times, because there's some of these kids that just want a hug, and so just be that person that they can come to. Like, I keep the open door policy. I give my business card as a hall pass for them because it's got my number on it. And I tell them, if you need me, you call me, you text me, I answer it 24/7. And so if they need anything, I think they need to have somebody that they can approach, because kids are curious. That's one thing. And if they're not told no, or if they're not told what the dangers are, then they're not going to know. They know that, if they touch a hot stove, it burns them. But how did they know that? Did they touch it, or did we tell them? So I think being present is great, but be approachable. Be approachable to these kids where they feel comfortable to come talk to you about anything, and it may stem the conversation into where you can make your impact on them.
Wow. Great resources and information. Thank you all so much. So Sergeant Johnson and Nurse Pryor, thank you for being our guests on this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. Thank you to everyone that's watching this program. Tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comment boxes on YouTube and Facebook after this live program. If you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing on September 7th, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. We also want to encourage you to go to the Florida Department of Health Office of Medical Marijuana Use website to learn how to obtain a legal medical marijuana card in the state of Florida. We also encourage you to go to Florida A&M University's Mary website to learn more about this initiative, its educational programs, and additional information about cannabis use in Florida. Thanks, everyone.